One's a 1960 campy dad movie, the other is a 2001 heist movie benchmark. Ocean's 11. They remade it. Hi, and welcome back to They Remade It. I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
Hey, we're back in it.
Wait, Jacob?
Just going for the kind of Woody the Woodpecker routine this time.
Yeah, I had Peggy Hill saying Boggle in my head at the time, but the Peggy Hill and Woody Woodpecker are like the same character.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against that.
They're both really annoying. Okay, out. Let's not bash the matriarch of the king. The king? The Hill family. Hill of the king.
It's Elvis's family.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of Elvis, we're doing Ocean's 11 this week. I can see you're such a big fan of it.
I think I heard about it somewhere once.
I mean, I hope so.
No, that's literally a movie that... No, it's just one of those movies that you hear about but don't ever get around to watching. I know you've seen it. I'm just saying you know those movies.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah, of course.
Godfather, The last Indiana Jones I hadn't seen until recently. It's just... They're staples that sometimes people miss just because there's so many staples at this point.
Mine is Casablanca.
Yeah.
Mostly because I don't really want to watch it because it seems kind of dry.
Is Casablanca got Peter Lorre in it?
I do not know.
I think it might, and if it does, there's no way that movie can be dry. Anything with Peter Lorre is golden. I have a movie in mind to do an episode on in the future that stars Peter Lorre, so...
Anyway, kind of get into the, into the more casual side of it, which I've been watching this, the last couple of weeks.
Oh, okay, yeah, let's do that, uh-huh.
Yeah, that tends to be a bit we do.
I forgot about that. Well, the only real movie that I actually ended up watching was Truth or Dare, which was that
thriller thing.
The thriller horror movie that came out within the past year. Yeah, which, yeah, that was funny. It was really funny.
I can imagine. Like good, or just it was so funny because it was awful.
No. It's I wouldn't say it's awful either. It was just standard horror movie. Like, there aren't really bad... I say this as a big fan of horror film. There's no real bad horror film. You get really good ones, and then you get horror films. And this was just a horror film.
Okay. I kind of see you.
Yeah, there's just those really good ones that you can watch all the time, like Rosemary's Baby, or... The Shining is like a good horror thriller movie. And then the tier below that is just all the rest of them. They kind of bleed together.
Gotcha.
It was just in that category. It was really ridiculous. They had... Whenever... There's like a demon that possesses people in this game of Truth or Dare. And whenever it possesses people, they like smile and they bend their forehead down to cover their eye. Almost like they're doing a Jack Nicholson impression. And that's supposed to be scary. So
yeah, I had seen that in the trailers and everything. It's like, on a very base level, that's a little creepy, but I feel like that kind of loses its effect almost immediately.
It's creepy in the context of the movie, but I mean, at that point, they could not do that, and it would still be scary because you're trapped in a demonic Truth or Dare game. So,
it's like the concept alone just boggles me. It's like an ancient demon has decided that Truth or Dare is going to be its crux.
Yeah, it has one of those bullshit things by the end. The explanation that, it's a horror movie, so the explanation's okay. Even if in any other movie it would be ridiculous and stupid. But yeah, I watched that. I saw part of Deadpool 2. I probably saw the first 25 minutes of it. And
very nice.
Then
I still haven't seen that. How is it?
It was like the first one.
Yeah.
Deadpool, have you gone back and watched it? Because I know you, and Steph watched it in the theater when it came out, but have you watched it since then?
I've seen it around a couple of times. Like, I'd find it on
Right.
TV, or I actually watched it on a plane one time. So I've watched it again, and I see like scenes online.
Right. It was so funny and good, like in the moment, the first time watching it. But I think that was just sort of the experience, because like repeated viewings, it doesn't
Yeah,
really
that's
hold
definitely
up.
one. That's definitely a theater, a prime theater watching one, and like it's fun getting like a reaction with an audience. But
Yeah.
then once you're watching it by yourself, you're just kind of like, well, I'm just kind of watching terrible things happen to terrible people. This is kind of weird.
Yeah, that's exactly what I got from Deadpool 2, and I'll probably watch the rest of it some other time, but that's how I felt. Um
Fair enough.
Now a quick rundown of like TV shows. DuckTales finished up its first season, so I watched that.
Nice.
Um the
Still
Ven-
need to watch that.
yeah, it's good. The Venture Brothers finally had their season 7 premiere after like 3 years, so I picked up that. That's on, I think, their third episode of the
Okay.
season out of, I guess, 10. So I was watching that, and Matt Groening's Disenchantment premiered, I guess, a week ago, probably, maybe a little over a week ago on Netflix, and I watched all of that in about 2 days.
I
And
kind of figured like I remember you showing the Easter egg photo that you put to the group chat, so I figured you were watching that.
oh yeah, that's actually from the last episode of the season too.
And I thought it was like I at first thought it was like a kind of movie thing that they were making. I didn't know it was actually a series.
Oh yeah, it's a series, and it's actually really good. I like it. I think it's pretty funny because it has writing staff from The Simpsons and writing staff from Futurama, but the co-creator of the show alongside Matt Groening is Josh Weinstein, who was showrunner for season 7 and 8 of The Simpsons, which is really good seasons. Uh,
Hmm.
the humor of Disenchantment just it ends up coming off as really good Futurama,
Oh,
is what I
nice.
think. So it's more Futurama humor than it is Simpsons humor.
Then I'll probably need to check it out because I loved Futurama.
Yeah, but that's about it. What
All
about
right.
you?
Well, on the movie side, I actually watched a more indie flick this time. I saw Eighth Grade by Bo Burnham.
The hell is that? I know who Bo
It
Burnham is, but
right. It's like it's it's a movie about a girl in eighth grade in like 2018, and just it hits all those moments of like, oh god, horrible nostalgia.
I just realized what you're talking about. I haven't seen that, but I've gotten trailers for it on YouTube.
It is really good. It was
Really?
really fantastic. Like the main girl, her performance is outstanding, and it's just it continues the whole feeling of all those moments in middle school, even though we went to it at a slightly different time. It just all those like really negative forms of nostalgia pop right back up. It's like, oh god, this is horrible. I love it.
Okay, would you say it's a black comedy like Election or something?
I I guess it's like it's funny in the sense of it's very real. Like it's funny in the sense of this is stuff we literally would have gone through, and it's stuff they literally would have you know like people in middle school literally would react, and so it's funny in that sense, but it's still very emotional and dark. There's very freaky moments at certain moments. It's definitely one of the more realistic films I've seen in a while. So that's the best I can put it as a comedy.
Okay. All right.
It's billed as a comedy, but and it comes across as one mostly just because it's Bo Burnham, directing and everything. But it's definitely just kind of meant to be kind of almost a biopic.
Okay. Uh I'll have to add that to my list then.
Yeah,
Look into
really
it.
good one. Beyond that, let's see. I've been trying to watch. I don't think I've watched any more films. I've been trying to watch the show Preacher, just because it's just like I had been interested in it a while back, and I realized, oh, it's still having new episodes. I thought it got canceled,
Right.
and like it's I've never noted my love of Seth Rogen pictures and that sort of thing, but this one's okay. I mostly like the main actors,
Okay.
and it's very much just one of those just everything is horrible. It's a like just it's it's like Family Guy cranked up to 11.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's like it's the kind of situation where in the more recent episodes, one of the main characters is Hitler, like literally Hitler, and you kind of feel for him.
Aw.
And so it's weird. It's enjoyable just for the fact that, like, in the sense of watching a train wreck, but it's a really good train wreck.
Okay.
So it's at least well made. And it's just gory and disgusting. It's like, it's just kind of one of those like brainless things to watch.
Right. No, those are good to have every now and again.
Yeah, I kind of needed one after a while, and I was like, yeah, this is gonna fill a nice little niche.
Yeah, I'll admit to having done that with Family Guy and American Dad in the past. It's just a show that is on while I'm doing something.
Right. That's pretty much what I was doing here. I've only made it recently to the most recent episode, so I think actually yesterday I watched it, so I'm more or less caught up.
Right. Nice.
So yeah, beyond that, I don't think I've watched a whole lot else. I've just been playing, video games mostly, but this isn't a video game show, so that doesn't matter.
Right. I didn't talk about what I've been playing.
Exactly.
All right.
I've performed a cardinal sin. I've spoken of other media.
You'll have to do that on our other podcast. The video game one, title pending.
They replayed it.
They replayed it. Holy shit. Okay, we should move on to the synopsis lest we ruin that pun.
So to begin, we have the 1960s version, directed by Louis Milestone. We start off at a lovely, presumably California home, where a man named Spiros Aesopus, it's one hell of a name.
Very Greek.
Very Greek. Oh yeah, it is Greek.
Yeah.
But yes, he is calling up a man by the name of Danny Ocean and Jimmy Foster in regards to a potential scheme that Mr. Aesopus has put together and requires their assistance from. At this point, we don't know what that job is or what kind of assistance they would need. From this point, we pretty much just kind of go on a whirlwind tour all over the place, collecting up a bunch of ex-Army mates in the 82nd Airborne, of which all these, older guys are part of. Frank Sinatra being Danny Ocean, Dean Martin playing Sam Harmon, and Sammy Davis Jr. playing Josh Howard. The Rat Pack, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And going around collecting all these random people from their army group to get together for this scheme, ranging from Peter Lawford as Jimmy Foster, Joey Bishop as Mushy O'Connor, Richard Conte as Anthony Bergdorf, among many others, because there's a lot of guys in this that are basically the exact same character, just with somewhat different inflections, with the exception of the Jackson character, Lewis Jackson, played by Clem Harvey. That's only because he just plays a kind of hick character. So, through this whirlwind tour, they collect up their whole big army group, and they collect them back at Mr. Aesopus's house. And at this point, Danny Ocean reveals to all of them what this whole big shindig is all about, laying out a little, like, handkerchief that I guess he had made custom, I don't know, of the main strip of 1960s Las Vegas, showing 5 major casinos that they were all going to rob at the same time on New Year's Eve, or New Year's Day, depending on how you look at it. So, there's some back and forth. They're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this, says the Dean Martin character, Sam Harmon. And eventually they all agree because they're crazy and they're army guys and they want to do something with their lives that isn't just bumming around. And they proceed to Las Vegas and start the planning sequence. They plan out this whole big scheme of having Bergdorf, the electrician of the group, rig up all of the casinos simultaneously so that when a power outage goes out, instead of kicking on any kind of backup power, it opens all the cages to where all the money is held in each of these casinos. And so all they have to do is very drawn out go to each and every one of these 5 casinos, label out where they gotta go, look at all the fuse boxes, look at all the various people they need to look at, and like have this whole deal with, like, they have ultraviolet glow-in-the-dark paint to mark out where everything is so that during the power outage they can actually see where they're going. They do this whole big rigmarole like 5 times at each of these casinos. And, you know, there's some, and, you know, in the background there's some plot being brought up. There's some potential Chekhov's guns being put in the background. For instance, Jimmy Foster's mother is getting married to what I think is like an ex-mobster or something named Duke Santos. They never really established. Yeah, they never directly established what he has, other than he has connections to various, you know, criminal underlings and that sort of thing, I guess. And so that's being set up in the background as, you know, the crew is getting ready to pull this heist. And on the night of New Year's Eve, it more or less goes off without a hitch, except for Mr. Bergdorf has a heart attack in the middle of the street after they have collected up all of their money, and just straight up dies. Not really. Like, it's briefly established that he has some heart issues, and that's why he pulled the job, but otherwise he just kind of up and goes. So at this portion we come to the third act, in which the whole group has to kind of lay low and try to figure out that they're going to be getting out of the town with the money all, you know, nice and easy, until the 5 casino owners enlist the help of Mr. Santos to retrieve their money back so that they can actually get the money that they lost instead of only getting insured for a small portion of it. So Duke Santos goes around town, goes up calling various things, and ends up coming across how Mr. Bergdorf ended up dying, and finds out that he's part of the 82nd Airborne, which he remembers his soon-to-be, you know, son-in-law is a part of. And so he thinks, well, that's interesting and coincidental. And then he learns that his son-in-law, Jimmy Foster, is in Vegas at the time, even though he had previously been stated that he wouldn't be. And so he uses that to get together and realize, oh, he was probably part of that robbery. And so he confronts Jimmy Foster and Danny Ocean and tells them, hey, I'm okay with this whole deal. I don't want to turn you in because I love, you know, Mrs. Foster and I still want to get married to her. But I want you to give me half of everything you stole, because I've been promised 30% from the casinos, but I could get 50% from you guys. And considering what I'll do if you don't, this is your best option. So, bye. And so he runs off, and the whole crew is left floundering, not sure what to do. So they come up with the plan to hide the money in the casket of Anthony Bergdorf. They pronounce it Bergdorf throughout the film just because their accents, and it's really annoying. And so there's a pretty, it's kind of a hilarious scene of them driving over with Sammy Davis Jr. driving their getaway garbage truck, and Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Peter Lawford are all putting on blackface essentially to disguise themselves. And so that's a little there, but they then get to the chapel where he's being held, well, not chapel, mortuary, and proceed to place all of their money underneath his body inside this casket, while reserving $10,000 for Mrs. Bergdorf and their now, you know, fatherless son, and proceed to wait for the body to be shipped off back to San Francisco, and, you know, all's well that ends well. Well, then it turns out that Mrs. Bergdorf doesn't have a whole lot of money besides the $10,000 that she's given, and decides to not have the body shipped out of Las Vegas. And so the entire crew is like, oh crap, what are we going to do? They go to the chapel where, you know, the service for Mr. Bergdorf is being held, and, you know, with Duke Santos right after them, realizing, oh, they're coming here. They probably hid the money somewhere inside this place, or along with the body, I guess. I don't know. And in the middle of the service, they hear something in the background that sounds like a roaring sound, and so they ask one of the workers at the chapel, and it turns out Anthony Bergdorf's getting cremated. And I guess within the very same casket he was held in, not like in like a temporary casket. He is getting cremated in the same casket with all of their money. So all of it literally goes up in smoke, and the scene ends and comes upon all the remaining 10 just walking down the New Vegas Strip with their names being brought up for the casting, and the theme song EO11 by Sammy Davis Jr. playing over the whole scene. And then it just kind of ends. Just with a bunch of sad 1960s dudes walking away. Moving right along to the 2001 version, we start off with our main character, Danny Ocean, played by George Clooney, being released from prison in somewhere in New Jersey, and following him directly as he goes off back into his life of gambling and just doing terrible things, as he goes off to Los Angeles, completely violating parole, to meet up with his old buddy Rusty Ryan, played by Brad Pitt, in order to tell him about a massive plan that he had come up with. This is he either came up with it before he was put in prison or during his prison sentence. It's never really made clear. So these guys, realizing, okay, this is an insane plan, we need help for it, go to seek a financier. This being Ruben Tishkov, played by Elliot Gould. Ruben being this kind of old Vegas type. He's been around all the time. He's got a couple casinos, I think. And they go to him telling him, oh, we're going to go rob 3 casinos that are owned by Mr. Terry Benedict, played by Andy Garcia, a guy who has screwed over Ruben Tishkov by, I think it was purchasing one of his older casinos and then publicly demolishing it in this big ceremony that we see later in the film.
Yeah.
And so
he essentially pushed him out.
Right, exactly. So Ruben, wanting all kinds of revenge, even though he knows the plan is near suicidal, decides, okay, I'll finance this. I just need you guys to get a crew together. And so they get the crew together of Matt Damon playing Linus Caldwell, a pickpocket type, Bernie Mac playing Frank Catton, a blackjack dealer and inside man, Casey Affleck and Scott Caan as the Malloy brothers, 2 kind of technical experts and idiosyncratic types. Carl Reiner as Saul Bloom, who plays kind of an actor who can play as their kind of honeypot to lure in the people they need while on the job. Qin Xiaobo playing Yen, a Chinese acrobatist. And Eddie Jameson playing Livingston Dell, a kind of technical whiz for the whole deal. These guys... Oh, and this is the fun part. Don Cheadle playing Basher, a British demolition expert in a sense, who, funnily enough, goes uncredited in the film due to a, crediting dispute that they have. He requested to be top billing along with George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and Matt Damon, but he was denied, and so he was denied billing altogether. So he's not even listed on the list that I have.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he is top billed listed on Oceans 12 and 13 though. So works out. So they get this whole wacky crew together, and Danny Ocean brings them all to Ruben's house and finally reveals what the plan is: to rob simultaneously 3 different casinos, all pool into this one vault. This massive vault that just got all kinds of security detail and is essentially impossible in every way to break into. And so everyone's like, yeah, okay, we can do that, because the paycheck is somewhere around $160 million. So it's going pretty well at that point. Oh, God, I had to cough so bad. Oh, God. They go into the planning phase, which is revealed when, the character Tess is brought into things, yada, yada. Okay. So they move basically straight into the planning phase. They start going into predominantly the Bellagio casino. I think that's where they they break in and then break back out of, even though there are two other casinos involved. But they go into the planning phase, the basic stuff from a heist movie you might expect. And it's revealed during this moment that the now girlfriend of the man they're robbing, Terry Benedict, is actually the ex-wife of Danny Ocean, Miss Tess Ocean, played by Julia Roberts. And so it's revealed that Danny Ocean is doing this job not simply to get at all this insane amount of money they'll be getting, but to, in a way, try to steal back Tess, or at least kind of stick it to her now boyfriend, who's been known to be just a terrible person. It's just everything that we see about him. Even though it's not seen too much, it's not amazing characterization sometimes, but it's shown that he's a cutthroat businessman and who will destroy anybody who goes, out of their way to cross him. And so that throws a wrench in the plan, and Rusty starts to lose trust in Danny's, motivations for the whole idea. But plans still go accordingly. They go through a whole massive endeavor of getting all this insane kind of tech and resources that they don't go into a whole lot in how they get it, but that's kind of besides the point, I suppose. They build a complete replica of the vault they're working to break into, which isn't revealed its purpose for until later. They have to steal a giant EMP, like literally an EMP bomb from a local technical institute to knock out power for when they're, breaking in, which is just a whole big deal. And just constant planning and going back over all of these, tiny details, and eventually moving right into the night of the heist, which happens to be on the night of a massive boxing match in the casino near, I guess they have an arena nearby. But so there'll be a whole bunch of extra money as more people are flooding to come see the fight. So the whole plan starts to go down with each person trying to infiltrate in through various means. Matt Damon's character infiltrating as a member of the Nevada Gaming Commission, trying to get into the main vault elevator. Danny Ocean deliberately being spotted at, trying to go after his ex-wife again, and as a result being put into a back room and beaten the crap out of. However, he's, I guess, paid off the guy who's beating the crap out of him, so he's able to escape and get to the elevator as well. And all the while, all the other people are from the outside monitoring cameras, getting the EMP ready, and all of it just kind of culminating to the power being blown out and the, Danny Ocean and Linus Caldwell going down into the vault, knocking out the guards and breaking out with the help of Yen, who has been planted inside the vault in this disguisable chip case, or I think it's a personal effects cart. And so they break in, and it's shown over the video cameras of them stacking up all their money and booby trapping it. Booby trapping half the money and putting the rest of it inside bags. This is when Rusty from the outside then decides to call Terry Benedict, telling him, "Hey, I'm robbing your casino. If you don't let my guys go with half of your money, I will trigger an incendiary device that destroys all of your money." And so they agree to it. They go down into the vault where the guys are hanging out, and they allow a couple of employees from the casino to go down in the vault and take the bags out to an unmarked van that gets brought up to the front by some unknown driver. And the van drives away. And Terry Benedict immediately has it followed with some of his, personal, hit staff or something. And as the hit staff approach the van at the airport, it is revealed that it's actually being remote controlled from a small distance away, and all the money is then blown up in the back. But it turns out it's just a bunch of flyers for hookers in all the bags. There was no money in it. And then when they go back down into the vault, we follow Terry Benedict as he goes back down into the vault, and he finds the money in there has also been blown. But not all of it was money. Most of it was also just more flyers. And so they think, well, what the heck? What happened to all the actual money? Well, it rewinds a little bit and shows the moment where we see on the monitors where the vault is being robbed. It's actually a pre-recorded video you made from the prop vaults that the crew had made in order to make it look like they were immediately robbing it then. However, turns out it was, they weren't robbing it at all, and the entire SWAT team that they had been brought in order to defuse the situation was the crew. They were all dressed up in SWAT outfits, and as they walked in to kind of pretend secure the area, they end up walking right back out with the actual money, whereas with the money they had given to the employees was just the fake flyers and all. So they walk right back out with, I think, even more than half the money. I think most of it. They show that some of it does get burned in the vault, but they do walk out with at least 150 mil. And they just go right out, and it kind of wraps up with Danny Ocean returning to the room where he was getting the crap beaten out of him, and Terry Benedict coming to him being like, what the heck did you do? And Danny Ocean's like, I don't know. And as they're leaving, they film the entire thing on the surveillance cameras that are all over this casino, and then project it to Tess Ocean, who, she's back in it. They project it up to her to show, this interaction between her ex-husband and her now boyfriend, as Terry Benedict basically outright says he would willingly give up Tess in order to get all of his money back, and then has Danny Ocean arrested for violating his parole and gets him off the property. But in the process, Tess walks right out the casino and tells him, hey, screw you, bye. And there's a brief moment of Tess and Danny kind of having some reconciliation before showing the whole crew standing out in front of the big Las Vegas fountains, which there's an official name for it, but it's really cool, with Claire de Lune playing over the background as it fades out, and then shifts to a scene, quote, 3 to 6 months later, as Danny Ocean is released from his parole violation, and they go off on their way while being followed by some of Terry Benedict's goons, presumably to be dogged by them to try and get their money back. And that's where it ends.
Wow. Confusing enough for you?
Oh my god. It's easy enough to watch because it's so well shot in a lot of ways that it's easy to follow, but trying to recount all of that is insane.
Well, I think you did a relatively good job.
Well, thank you. It's as good of a job as I can manage.
Well, with that being said, are you ready for another long-winded spiel? But this time from me.
Oh boy, it's my favorite time of the day.
It's my favorite time too. The time when I clear my throat, apparently. No,
Hooray!
No, it's full circle. So I'm just going to start it off with 1960s Ocean's 11 first. Okay, first we have connection to Scarface 1932 with the actor George Raft, the actor William H. O'Brien, and the actor Jack Perry. All three appear in both films. And the director of the 1960s Ocean's 11, Louis Milestone, was also an editor on the original Scarface. Now for the 80s Scarface, Frank Sinatra. He was in the soundtrack to Scarface. I don't remember any of his songs in the 80s one, but
I'm sure they just played it over some background scene.
It's easy enough, maybe when they were in some sort of lounge setting. Well, the same thing can be said for Blade Runner 2049. The soundtrack of that particular movie also has Frank Sinatra in it.
Ah, yes.
And lastly, True Grit 1969 has Jeffrey Sayer in it, who was an actor in both films. Okay.
Alrighty.
Now we'll move on to Ocean's 11 2001.
I'm sure this is going to be a little extensive.
A bit more, yeah. Thomas Rosales Jr. was an actor in Ocean's 11. He did stunt work in the 80s Scarface. Elvis Presley and Johnny Mercer were on the soundtrack to both Ocean's 11 and Blade Runner 2049. Frank Patton, a background actor, was in Ghostbusters 1984 as well as this movie. Where Ghostbusters 2016 actually had more actors in common. Andy Garcia, actor in both, and Mark Falvo, who I believe we may have seen before, was in Ghostbusters 2016 as well as Ocean's 11 as an extra. Apparently he gets around a lot, so I think we'll be seeing more of Mark Falvo in the future. The last thing
Good to know.
The last interesting thing I wanted to bring up about the 2016 Ghostbusters is that Al Cerullo, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was the official helicopter pilot on the filming of both movies, the 2001 Ocean's 11 and Ghostbusters 2016.
Oh.
He flew the helicopter.
Well, good on you, Mr. Helicopter Pilot.
So now a more obvious one, Matt Damon was in 2010's True Grit as well as 2001's Oceans. Jerry Weintraub was the producer of Ocean's 11 and both the Karate Kids, the old and the remake. Yes, he produced both. He was a producer of both.
Wow.
And
I didn't know you could typecast a producer.
That's not all. R.J. Lewis was co-producer of Ocean's 11 2001, and he was the executive producer of the 1984 Karate Kid. So there's a lot of Ocean's Karate Kid producer like crossover here, like mixing.
Who would have thought?
It's a little strange.
I guess that's the point of full circle, to really just see the kind of, snake nest that is Hollywood.
And now the last bit before we bring full circle to a close. Susan Ekins, executive producer of Ocean's 11 2001 and the 2010 Karate Kid. Ta-da!
My God. Why? Why is there all this stuff with Karate Kid?
I don't know. Lots of producers in there. Co-producers, executive producers, and just some plain old producers.
Is that going to be a running gag throughout this entire show now? Is that everything relates back to Karate Kid? Is it the center of the cinematic universe?
That's the ultimate goal of Full Circle, is to find out the pure center.
It's like how the game, like 5 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, at the center of it is Christopher Lee.
I didn't know that.
He apparently knows so many people that he's considered to be the center of that entire little thing.
Okay, well, good connections, I guess. Last little bit before we close out Full Circle. I know we said we'd bring it to an end, but Jerry Weintraub actually passed away fairly recently. Only it looks like only 3 years ago. The producer.
God rest.
So that's it. That's all I got.
Hooray! Oh my God, these movies.
I said before we started recording, but I hadn't seen either of these prior to this particular viewing. Now I not only had heard about them, but I knew exactly what they were about, but I hadn't actually watched them.
Of course.
Which is completely different because you get the cinematic feeling, you get the shots, the scenes, the action of it.
Right, of course. And I had actually seen both of these. I'd seen like 90% of the 1960 version, but I had seen the 2001 version probably like 5 times. It's me and my brothers. It's my brother. Like me and my brother's one of our favorite movies, and so I've seen it a whole bunch of times. That and the sequels.
Now, I guess when you say you've seen 90% of the original, the only part of the movie you missed were the 10 minutes of Duke Santos laughing.
Surprisingly, no. That's one of the few parts I did
well,
see.
All the better remembered then. That's probably my favorite part. I knew Cesar Romero was in the movie because I saw the credits of the movie, but I didn't realize that it was him as Duke Santos until he started laughing, because he looked very much like his portrayal of the Joker on the Adam West TV show. And I was like, oh, that is...
Right. And I forgot that was him.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that is Cesar Romero. He is in this. Like, because I know him much better in clown makeup than I do just as a normal actor.
I mean, for how many people can we honestly say can we say that?
Not very
I mean, really,
many, I'll have to say.
Yeah. But yeah, he's a great actor. You know, I gotta say, he's hilarious.
He has a lot of great lines in that movie. His facial expression in the last scene he's in, when they're at the mortuary and he's playing with the band from the stack of $10,000, is just great. It's so he doesn't even look directly at them. He like glances up briefly, but it's so smug. It's like, you asshole.
Yeah, there's a whole, like, he's probably kind of the saving grace as far as characters go in that film, because like compared to the two compared, it's pretty obvious which one has like the more diverse cast, or at least just group of characters. Because the problem with, like, I love older movies. I love so many of the movies from the 1960s that just have this archetype of character. There's the wise guy, confident, like the competent man type character. But the problem is that almost every character in the 1960 version is the same. Like, it's all just like, the 1960s competent American man, with like the exception of Sammy Davis Jr., because he's at least, kind of, he's got like a cool personality. And like I said, the guy who played Lewis Jackson, only because he's, just a cowboy. Everyone else is like only slight degrees off of the same character that's pretty much encapsulated perfectly by Frank Sinatra and to a lesser degree Dean Martin.
And I mean, that being said, like, Frank Sinatra, I think, is actually a decent actor. And Sammy Davis Jr. holds his own, but most of the main cast, they're not only sort of the same style of character, but a lot of them are just wooden as hell.
Oh my god, like, for real. And so many of them were just so they were just kind of forgettable in so many sequences. Like, there was one scene I remember where there was one character walking through like a back door to get to kind of a kitchen area, and I thought it was just like an extra like just going along his thing, but it turns out it was one of like the main crew disguised as a waiter. And he was going off to like check the area, and I was like, "Oh yeah, he's like important," because he waved over Anthony Bergdorf to like go in there, and I was like, "Wait, what? Did they pay off this waiter? Oh no, wait, he's one of the guys." Because there's like a good 3 or 4 members of the crew that just I barely remember. The one that I kind of remember is like his name's Curly, if only because he directly introduces himself to Sam Harmon as he gets back.
Yeah, he
from
takes his
Hawaii.
hat off. He's like, "It's me."
But that's about it. Where versus like the 2001 version, every single character is just got, you can pretty much sum it up in like, quick little bits, young pickpocket type, Bernie Mac, the twitchy tech expert, and of course my favorite, did he really have to have an English accent?
That bothered me. That actually did bother me while watching the movie. I was like, I'm not a fan of this English accent. I'm sorry, Don, but...
Oh, Don Cheadle's even gone on record saying, like, I realized it wasn't good, and he wanted to change it for Oceans 12 and 13, but he wasn't able to.
Well, yeah, that would mess with continuity.
Right, exactly. But yeah, he himself has gone on record.
Unless it was revealed it was just another con. He was pretending to be some British person. I don't know.
Let
me rewrite your movies.
Yeah, I really did think that's what it was going to pull to when I first saw this movie. It's like, he can't possibly be actually English, can he? But it's like, nope, he is. He's just not great with the accent. Which,
While we're still on the subject of, sorry, you had a follow up.
I was just gonna say it's like, which it's still not the worst English accent I've seen portrayed. I love Dick Van Dyke more than some relatives, but he's just terrible English accent in Mary Poppins.
I love listening to Dick Van Dyke talk about his people talking about that accent. He's like, I thought it was okay. I thought it was all right.
I mean,
and I'll be honest, I'm one of the people that doesn't have much of a problem with it.
Oh, I mean that's fair. It's like I'm just I'm picky about accents, I guess.
No, I gotcha.
And I still love the movie, and I love him in it. But it's an easy target.
Yeah, no, I understand. But while we're still on the subject of actors, I'd like to point out, I guess maybe because he hadn't done a lot of roles up to that point, and Three's Company was a 70s show, right?
I think so.
I believe it was in the 70s, so that's sort of more understandable. But the fact that Norman Fell had like nothing to do, he was there in the main cast, but it's so weird seeing him there and knowing who that is, but him just sort of being in the background, barely doing anything.
Yeah.
It's like all these others are like nobodies.
Which one was he again? Because I even have the list here, but I don't recognize the name.
He was Peter.
Okay.
Peter Reiner. Yeah, did he have a really specific goal? I don't believe so, but I still knew it was him.
He's not like, Buddy Lester, like he's trying to do it for his wife or something.
No, he's just there.
He's just kind of there. I mean, all right.
I was like, you just wait another 10 years, you'll get a sitcom.
Yeah, there really is the distinct feeling in the 1960 version that a lot of it was banking on just the popularity of the Rat Pack as they're like to kind of hold their own for the main cast, because there's a whole bunch of characters that could have had a lot of cool screen time, like Angie Dickinson as Beatrice Ocean, and the little fling character, I think it was Patrice Wymore playing Adele Ekstrom.
Yeah.
And they were really good in both their roles, but they just kind of fall to the wayside just as characterization.
Right.
Which admittedly also Tess Ocean does end up filling that role in the 2001 version as well, which kind of sucks because I love Julia Roberts.
Right.
But it's just it's really noticeable in both those cases. It's just like, oh yeah, these are just like add-ons for no reason.
Maybe I'm nitpicking here. And also maybe it's because I'm more of an old Hollywood type of person.
Right.
But let's analyze the quality of the guest stars really quick.
Sure.
Who do we got in Ocean's 11 from the 1960s? Cesar Romero has sort of a main part, but he's technically a guest star.
Right.
He's bumped up a bit there though. Red Skelton, famous comedian. He shows up. He's in the.
You're gonna know these people
club.
Way more than I'm gonna know them.
No, that's fair. But Red Skelton's there. He's the one you remember. He was at the counter, and they were like,
"Oh yeah, the random
told us
guy.
not to cash it."
Oh, the random.
Yeah.
I did have a point about that. Like, there are just so many moments of random characterization for completely background, non-necessary characters. Well,
that's
what was his name? Like Mr. Fletcher or something. It's just this guy trying to cash a check and try to break his own personal limit for gambling while Danny Ocean is waiting to collect chips just to kind of blend in with the crowd. And this is like a several minute scene of him kind of bad mouthing the cashier and trying to get these chips. So it's like, what the hell?
Well, his name in the movie was Skelton too.
Skelton.
I'm pretty sure they said Mr. Skelton. So
I don't know where Fletcher came from.
Right. Well, so he wasn't even playing another. He was literally playing himself, famous comedian Red Skelton, getting thrown out of a casino.
Casually talking to Frank Sinatra on the side.
Right. But then, maybe I'm not thinking of all the guest stars in the 2001 one, but the only two that come to mind are Topher Grace and Haley Marie Combs. I think her first name is Haley.
Oh, all those people in that opening scene where we first meet Rusty, they're all famous teen heartthrob characters.
I was about to say, I wouldn't say famous, but I know they're all guest stars. Those are the only two that I immediately recognized, though.
Right. Yeah, well, like they all are like at least at the time of like at least during 2001, they're all part of something. Like you know, there's a Dawson's Creek person, there's a Charmed person. I don't really remember the rest of them, but they were.
Haley Marie Combs was Charmed, and Topher Grace is that '70s show.
Yeah.
But
So and I can't remember the other ones, but yeah, there's just this whole little scene of of like all these kind of like minor celebrities learning poker from Brad Pitt's character, and it's actually really funny. I love the scene right after as George Clooney and Brad Pitt are walking out, and like the crowds are trying to like paparazzi are trying to like take questions from Topher Grace and everything, but
yeah,
and then meanwhile George Clooney and Brad Pitt are just off to the side having a casual conversation like it's nothing else.
right.
It's like I love that scene every time. It's like, oh my god.
I like the part where he throws down the reds. He goes, "All reds." That's what I remember.
Yeah. My god.
That was a good one. Well, yeah, like I said, maybe I'm just showing my bias, but
Mhm.
I guess they had more guest stars, but the
Yeah.
quality just isn't there for me.
I guess technically
Oh,
the two boxers that show up are celebrities. Like they have a whole big fight. Like there's a whole like boxing match going on. Apparently those are two real world boxers. I just don't remember their names.
I don't know nothing about boxing.
I mean, same. I used to know a little, but I really don't know anything about them. All I know is that in the trivia it marks that those two have never actually had a fight together, but one of them had a fight with one of the other guy's son. So
Okay.
that's that's all I remember.
And what's his name from Cinderella Man?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oi.
I don't know that
I
one
don't-
at all.
The one that Craig Bierko played. Never mind.
But I guess we can. I guess we can go into kind of comparing just the quality of the heists. I mean, since those are the two, it is a heist movie. It is kind of the most important part of the film
Right.
because it's done from two very different styles. Obviously, not just because of the times, but also the ending result and everything. It's very different from each other.
Yeah. There's a lot less to the plan in the 1960s one.
Oh yeah, this was like
It's
it,
fairly straightforward.
it reminded me of a John Mulaney joke where back in the day it was so easy to get away with robbery. You just had to not be there when when the cops arrived. It's like cuz this is just like and it's also back before Las Vegas really hit its big like construction boom, and so most of the casinos were still like pretty small hotels, that sort of thing. With still like artsy and got all the lights and everything, but it was pretty much just like one long like road with those five casinos on it, and that was about it. And they literally just drove from each one to the next, doing some basic recon, and eventually setting up the whole like tripwire or like crossed wire trick, and that was that. They barely kind of go into it beyond that, and they just kind of walk in, seemingly without any difficulty, crack open each place's safe. But they never go into that. They break into five separate safes with no difficulty.
Yeah. They're, I was going to say they do have a lot easier of a time. It's not nearly as complicated because there's not a lot to the security there.
Yeah, it's like a couple of guys who are just like already kind of bumming around.
Right.
But and then compare that to modern Vegas, where they even up the ante with a vault that's like, quote rivals the security of most missile silos. So like,
Yeah.
which is bit of a weird one to do, since apparently missile silos have pretty lax security because they're really old. But whatever.
I do like it's the 2001 one spends so much time on the actual heist itself, where the 60s one spends a decent amount of time planning, but then it just happens. They do it really quickly, or relatively quickly, and then the rest of the movie is them trying to evade capture.
Right. Which like which I guess is kind of in a way more realistic in a sense, because it's just like it's just these army guys. They're not like seasoned criminals or anything who have like all these connections to get out of Dodge really easily. They like it really does have to focus on, if the heists like this happen, it would be really fast and precise, and there wouldn't be a whole lot of like style and having fun with it. And if any major thing went wrong, the whole thing would have collapsed. Versus things going wrong in the 2001 version didn't necessarily mean the whole thing was doomed. And
right,
so,
they're able to improvise a bit,
and then just have like lucky breaks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, or just keeping secrets from Matt Damon, that works too.
Yeah, that's that's like a distinct plot point throughout the thing. Don't tell Matt Damon shit.
Don't tell him what's going on, and there's not even a real reason that they do it.
Yeah, literally at one point Danny Ocean just goes, "Oh, where's the fun in that?" in response to why he was screwing around with Matt Damon's character.
I was like, what the hell are you talking about? What does that mean?
It's like
relative to the scheme.
Yeah, it really just like they didn't. I mean, I say that as if I say this as if the first one doesn't do it as well, but it's like there was kind of some meaninglessness to it in a lot of those, kind of character moments. But then obviously there's entire swaths of the 1960s version that are just kind of like, oh, that happened. Like,
yeah,
it kind of reminds me of like last time around when we were talking about like Winnie the Pooh. There was the idea of Ma, like empty space in films and stuff, and I think for a long time American films did something similar to that. But the problem is that they're done with such vigor. Like there are scenes of just end up being meaningless. They've done it with such vigor and such like direct focus that it kind of seems like they're meant to build up to something, but then they never do. It's definitely a time before the idea of Chekhov's gun as a trope, before that it had kind of entered public mindset. So like, you could do stuff like that where you could characterize this whole side character and everything, and have a whole little thing going on about them, and then they're not used at all. Versus if you do that in a modern film, if you do something like that, they're gonna be used. Like that's gonna be something that comes up later on.
Yeah, even with that one being from the 60s, it feels like Hollywood was still trying to get out of the idea of, well, these are just recorded plays, because you'll watch movies from as late as like 1960 and it'll be like, okay, well, they're talking, now let's show him walking across the hall to get to the phone. It's like, you don't have to show that. This isn't a play. He can teleport. He can kind of teleport there. And I know that's like an exaggerated response.
Right.
Or example. But a lot of it gives off air of that. Like scenes that are unnecessary. But I feel like maybe they were put in there just to show that things are happening. As if it was a stage play where every motion matters.
Right.
And you can't use cinema to tell the rest of the story.
Exactly. Like it was the idea of keeping continuity in such a complex situation, which like you couldn't really do a whole lot of tricks and stuff back then. Like camera movements had to be very, very wide, and there weren't a whole lot of major close-ups and that sort of thing. Versus 2001, the whole movie just oozes this style that it actually uses to its advantage to keep the pace up and continuity consistent, which I love. It's got music cues, it's got kind of like cliche cutaway animations and stuff to show some things are happening simultaneously, and it's got moments of major foreground, there's stuff happening in the foreground, and then it immediately zooms in and refocuses on something in the background that's happening simultaneously, and it keeps it so smooth that there are rare moments that you actually feel confused. And I think the problem with the 1960s version is that it seems obsessed with keeping continuity, but they have to do it with the techniques they have at the time. And so you have to have whole moments, like you said, of, he goes over to the counter, he gets his chips, he goes over to the slot machine, he plays some slots for a second, he goes to his buddy, they walk over to the wall, they spray paint the wall, they move on. It's like, this is a whole long deal that's just watched without any kind of like unbroken, as these guys basically do a tiny maneuver versus in the 2001 version that would have been, done overdone with a music with some music going in the background while they're also doing several other things at the same time. It's not going to be just that they're marking out a camera location. It's also that they're going to be marking out a guard that walks nearby. They're going to where communications or video surveillance gets spliced into. It's all working in tandem so you don't get bored.
Yeah. That's a good point on the musical cue thing too, because the original version has good like musical steps to it.
Yeah.
Or they'll just have the stings in the background, but I'd say 90% of the soundtrack to that movie is probably EO11.
Oh my god.
The first time because again I've never seen this movie before. They had Sammy Davis Jr.'s music number with EO11 at the garbage lot or whatever the hell it is. And I was like, "Oh, this song's catchy. I really like this song." And then the next time they played it, which was I guess him singing it in the garbage truck as he was driving, I was like, "Okay, maybe that's the only song he knows." And then they played it over the credits and I was like, "Stop it."
Oh, and
I'm done with this song.
And it's not even just that. It's if you listen to like every moment, like the song is used, like at least the tune of the song is used throughout the entire film. Like any moment they're driving around in the garbage truck, they're playing the same traveling version of the tune. Anytime it's like a background or there's a scene shift, they play like a slow version of it. It's constantly there.
Well, I know I did notice that sometimes when a scene changes, they'll have like a trumpet or something go ba da 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 da, and I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that's like the beat of the theme.
Yeah, exactly. But then and then it's that plus any kind of transportation moment. They're playing that song every single freaking time, and then the 2001 mixes it up very nicely. Like they have Elvis going for the whole Las Vegas aspect of it, which I love. There is a theme song that they have to kind of show the moments where they're planning, or the moment that it's shown like how the heist actually went down, or whenever there's a flashback moment. And so it's kind of cool seeing how they all relate back to each other versus the other one just kind of had the one tune that they just did for just kind of consistency's sake. Well, it's like I said, it's like a filmed play. It's like the kind of music they play every time a scene changes in a play.
Yeah, it's that magical fairy does like doodaloo doodaloo doodaloo,
pretty much
to let the audience know, oh, we're going somewhere else. I mean, that being said, I love old movies that have those transitions, like they just invented cool editing transitions.
Right, yeah.
So this movie loves fade-ins and fade-outs.
Oh my god. It uses
them all the time.
I love watching movies like this and learning, and just from context, learning where this technique first entered like public eye. And so it's like, oh, so this is when the crossfade became, a common transition.
Yeah.
The crossfade being like fading from one scene directly onto another versus a fade is like just fade to black and then back in.
Yeah.
Which they do both.
They do. The main thing I noticed they did that a lot. I can't remember. Was it an Iris Inn whenever Sammy Davis Jr. was emptying the trash cans? I feel like it was like an iris, but I can't remember for sure.
I think they may have done like a partial iris to kind of like focus the view right on where he's stashing the cash.
You're right.
But then they faded. But I think they did a crossfade out from that.
You're right. No, it was weird. It was like 3 bubbles that irised, and each one was like viewing him dumping a specific trash can.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It would show like Sahara or whatever casino that particular trash can was from, and it was a really strange shot that I hadn't seen before. It was like a cross between an iris and a fade.
Yeah, it was weird, which is interesting. It's it's kind of cool to see them do it, but still.
Oh yeah, I wasn't expecting it. That's got to be the equivalent of when people first saw Star Wars and they had those wipes.
Oh yeah, I'm sure people lost their minds when they first saw that. They're like, "Whoa, it's so interesting."
The screen's flying away like a spaceship.
I know. And like I love how that's just become like that's basically become like a PowerPoint presentation wipe now, and it's just seen as super unprofessional. But in the time, it was like revolutionary.
We've gotten to the point where you don't need transitions in PowerPoints, people, okay? If you're doing a PowerPoint, just have one slide go to the next one. Don't do crazy wipes or irises or a star iris or whatever. Don't do those.
Like if you've got animations involved with it, then maybe because you're at least shown that you have some competent knowledge of the situation. But otherwise, just leave it be.
A smash cut is fine.
We're good. We don't need to worry about it. This isn't a professional film. A jump cut will not, take you down 2 percentage points.
Now, something I did want to ask you, because you've said you've seen this, you've seen the 2001 Oceans like 4 or 5 times.
Yes,
before.
I haven't seen it all the way through that many times, but I've seen pretty much collectively that many times.
So Carl Reiner's little spasm that he has.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that was an I mean, it was intentional to the plot, but do you think that was an intentional reference to Bergdorf's heart attack from the original to, like, try and trick people who've seen the original into thinking he was going to die?
I don't...
Do you think that was meant that way?
I think it could have been. I wouldn't be, like, I wouldn't be surprised if it were. Because, they framed it very well in the 2001 one. You don't really expect it to be a planned aspect. Like since
right,
it establishes he has like ulcers beforehand, and that maybe it's just like, oh, it's just acting up at the worst possible time. But I would not be surprised if they did that, but I don't think they did it intentionally.
Okay, because coming from the viewpoint of someone who hadn't seen the movie before, if I even if I have seen them before, I watched them chronologically. So I watched the 60s one first, and then I watched the 2001 one. Seeing that happen, I was like, oh, this is the monkey wrench. Carl Reiner's character's gonna die the way Bergdorf's did, and then they gotta scramble and hide from someone, blah, blah, blah. That's the feeling I got, having not seen it before. So I was wondering if they maybe meant that as like a trick or something.
I think it'd be pretty cool if they did, because that would, like, I think... And like I said, it was framed pretty well in the sense that even if you hadn't seen the original, you might get that impression that, oh, this is going to mess everything up. And that would be really cool if they had done it. I haven't seen anything. I looked through a bunch of various trivia pages, and I hadn't seen anything of it mentioned. But I would not be surprised if that was maybe, maybe that actor did it, like brought that scene up because he had probably seen the original one. Because apparently on set, everyone... Like off camera, everyone always gathered around to listen to the stories he had because he had been around Hollywood forever.
Carl Reiner?
Yeah, Carl Reiner.
Oh yeah, dude.
Oh yeah, I don't know him too well personally.
He is one of the most prolific directors, writers, comedians.
Really?
He was Mel Brooks' partner.
Holy
for years
crap,
and years.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was the straight man to Mel Brooks's 10,000-year-old man. He'd be like, so, sir, what country were you from? Where were you born? He's like, Pangea, and then the audience would laugh. Yeah, Carl Reiner is very prolific.
Wow.
And his son Rob Reiner, famous director, did Princess Bride and Goonies, I think. He did Goonies. Maybe not Goonies, but he's done a lot of stuff.
Huh. Well, I learned something today.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't... It would be pretty cool. That seems like something Carl Reiner may have put in there deliberately. I mean, it's a pretty important moment to the plot, but it could have easily been worked in there. So, I wouldn't put it past them, but I don't think they did. All I know about that scene that was mentioned in trivia is that the wig that Brad Pitt is wearing as he's pretending to be the doctor, it was apparently the practice wig for Mike Myers' Austin Powers.
Oh my god.
It was I think it was just the rehearsal wig. It wasn't the actual wig. It's just they still had it on hand. They were like, all right, yeah, we can use this. Which, I will not lie, when I first saw that was one of my first thoughts. It's like, that looks like the Mike Myers, that looks like the Austin Powers wig. And sure enough.
I did not catch on. I didn't realize that.
I mean, like, I
That's
wouldn't
nice.
have known it if I hadn't looked it up, but yeah, it's just, I thought that was really funny.
Going in, since we're talking about Carl Reiner, we might as well talk about some other characters, right?
Oh, yeah.
Um, so I'm a bit split on this because Elliot Gould is Ruben Tishkoff in the new one, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, and Spiros is sort of his equivalent role in the '60s one, even though
Yeah, like as the
they're
financier sort of thing.
right. They're different builds and archetypes, but they're the same. They're the same character fulfilling the same role. Spiros, played by Akeem Tamaroff. Uh,
Who has a very lovely beard in his, cast photo.
yes, he does. I'm looking at it right now, but I prefer Elliot Gould's performance
Yeah, he was
just
really
as the
good.
character. He's really into it full swing, and I like that cigar chomping sort of character. Which actually I know this isn't a book podcast, but recently I've been reading sort of a Groucho Marx memoir told from the perspective of someone that spent years with him near the end of his life.
Oh, cool.
And apparently Elliot Gould was one of Groucho's closer friends, and there's a couple of sections where Elliot Gould is hanging out with him, or he's introducing Groucho to Barbra Streisand.
Oh, wow.
So I thought it was cool to see him munching on that cigar in the movie because it just reminded me of Groucho Marx.
I bet you that's probably where he got the inspiration.
Probably.
I mean, like, cigars as just like as a prop in movies were pretty much defined by Groucho Marx.
Well, that was a slight trail off, I suppose, but I prefer his performance, but I wish there was more of a relationship between him and Danny, like there is between Spiros and Danny in the original one, because that is banter that it's fantastic. I love it.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
probably my favorite parts of the movie are him screwing around with Spiros and Spiros not knowing what's going on at any given moment.
Yeah, like a huge portion of the 1960s movie is dedicated to just Danny Ocean and, to a lesser extent, Jimmy, just messing around with Spiros. Just like for no reason other than like, we just like getting a rise out of him, which I guess just kind of illustrates the type of characters that they are.
Right.
It's just, and like, I think the relationship between Danny and Ruben is expanded on more in 12 and 13.
Okay. Well,
But yeah,
haven't seen those ones, and
yeah, but but yeah, I do get what you mean. I like there is kind of like there is a very distinct feeling with the 1961 that everyone's just kind of buddy buddy with each other versus them all being like career criminals. And so, I mean, it's like I said in the intro, it's a very dad movie. They're all ex-army types from World War II, all just basically getting together for like a, just a row of a weekend. And so they just kind of have this like this kind of chill attitude with each other, or more just kind of friendly attitude, versus everyone in 2001 are at least like have at least to some degree been interacted with the criminal underworld for a long time, and so it's it's kind of hard to get a kind of a feeling of camaraderie other than just they all want this money. And
right.
so you don't get the kind of banter that you get between like Danny Ocean and Spiros.
Yeah, and I sort of reflected on it while you were talking about that. When I say that, I don't mean I want the same relationship replicated between Danny and Ruben, because Ruben is a different character from Spiros. It wouldn't work having that screw with him relationship, but I wish there
Right.
was some sort of relationship there instead of him just financing the venture and being his own character. I feel like they should relate more, and I feel like the movie as a whole, the 2001 one, is missing a lot of those sort of relationships. The only real in-depth relationships that we get would be George Clooney to Brad Pitt, George Clooney to Matt Damon, and George Clooney to Julia Roberts.
Yeah, like there's a whole lot of moments where there's some implied relationships that people have had in the past, but pretty much everyone does seem like their own. They like instead of doing the whole idea of um, a character act as a group, they all kind of the whole movie is kind of based on everyone's individual acting abilities, which I think in this case actually works out a little bit better just as far as film quality because it feels like it's not really. It's like you said, it's not a play. It's going to be very much a modern film, and so it very much wants to keep you on beat and wants to keep you engaged. And as you go from scene to scene, you also have to go from character to character.
Yeah.
And so like it at least gains that for film quality, but it does lose that as far as just quality of the relationship that everyone has. You kind of there really is no implication that oh yeah these guys are um, like a team. They're more just kind of acquaintances who happen to be working together, who happen to work together weirdly well as a result.
Right. I yeah, and that's something I like. I like character interactions. I like people being able to play off of each other really well. That's why I like those films like Mad 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 World and Rat Race, even though they aren't received very well, just because I think the character interplay is important.
Oh
But
yeah,
I feel like I can give some leeway to the Oceans 11 of 2001. That's a weird way to say it. But I feel I can give some leeway there because they are professional thieves and maybe they're trying to keep it as professional as possible. Well, I know they're trying to keep it as professional as possible.
yeah. And like that is, and it also is kind of like a sign of the times. It definitely seems like older movies are better at you know, like direct characterization and relationship building than a lot of modern ones for the very reasons that I've mentioned. It's like, they end up having a lot of empty moments in, films in the 1960s and 70s, but as a result, you get kind of more related to each other characters, even at the expense of, actual character depth. Um, but then in modern ones, to kind of keep the pace up, they have to keep everyone so different and so you get kind of it's more colorful, but it's kind of at the same time weirdly bland.
Yeah.
So it's got its strengths on each of those fronts, which I enjoy. Like I enjoy the relationships, like for both movies. Like it's very hard to pick, to say which one's better in certain aspects, but I do love how both of them did it with each of their characters. I still like the characterization more for the 2001 version simply because it's not all the same person. Danny Ocean and Rusty basically are the same character within reason, with Rusty kind of being a bit more kind of freelance than Danny is. Like Danny seems to have a lot more at stake here. And like I've gone and I talk about how, you know, similar the characters in the original one were so much, but there's this beautiful campiness and fun attitude of the original that is so hard to dislike. Like I actually wrote this one down specifically because I thought it was so clever. It's the 1960s Ocean's 11 is like a Monte Cristo of a movie. It's hammy, it's cheesy, it's got a lot of weird bits that don't make sense, but at the very least it looks great, and if you're into that, it's delicious.
What the hell is that? That sounds like a New York Times like columnist post. You know what? No, no. That would be like a a review that the Guardian would put out for the movie.
I don't know, and that's like I that was kind of by design because like I was watching it, and for whatever reason, that thought popped into my head. It's like this is like the perfect stupid way to talk about a stupid movie at times.
That's great. I love it.
I was so proud of it.
Clip that.
I distinctly wrote it down. Like I don't write out down a lot of notes for these. I tend to work better off the cuff, but for this one, I was like Monte Cristo, perfect.
Excellent.
It's the perfect idea.
I
It's
wow.
but yeah,
Clip it and put it on the fridge.
that's that's gonna be like if someone ever does uh like a compilation sum up, like, or if we ever do like an audio trailer to show off the show. That's going to be one of the clips they take out of context.
Yeah.
It's like, this movie's like a Monte Cristo.
No, that is full in context. You described a meal.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. but
okay,
but yeah, it's just like, I guess, it really is just this fun little, like, everyone's acting in it is like ranges from pretty damn good to could have been better. And like there's like the scene with Dean Martin seducing this random drunk woman to get her away from like the electrical room, and which I actually really like, because a lot of the lines that actress had said were ad-libbed. One of them being, "I'm so drunk I couldn't even lay down without holding on," which is apparently a Dean Martin line from another film, I think. And so she had actually ad-libbed that in there, and I thought that was really cool.
That is neat. Did he pick up on it?
Well, he wasn't right next to her when it happened, but I'm sure he picked up on it at some point.
Oh, okay.
But apparently, it wasn't Dean Martin like a dick or something. He probably wouldn't have cared. he was either,
well,
which one was the dick and which one was the alcoholic? Like in the Rat Pack.
Oh, in the Rat Pack?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty interchangeable. I mean, Frank Sinatra was notoriously a dick to everybody. Like,
oh yeah,
because that was big.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was the dick. Dean Martin was like alcoholic, and then I can't remember with Sammy Davis.
I mean, that was back in the day when the mob owned pretty much everything, and Frank Sinatra had pretty heavy mob ties.
Right. So. As I'm sure it's like common knowledge at this point.
Right.
And I should just add, just as a little side point, because I thought it was hilarious, just all the times of Frank Sinatra talking about all his time in the war. Like as his character while he had dodged the war altogether.
That was great.
I loved it so much. Just every time it's like, he's like acting as a sergeant and everything. It's like, you piece of shit.
Perfect. His goons are gonna come after you.
Oh no, Frank Sinatra's. Isn't he dead?
Yeah.
Okay, for a split second I was like, he's dead, right? Like, what does he care?
I think his son. I think Junior is gone too. I think he passed away a couple years ago.
I'm pretty sure. Like, he's been long gone. I'm not terribly fearful of Frank Sinatra's goons at this point. But
they're working for his estate.
All right, fair enough. But yeah, like, I loved all those little bits in the 1961. Like, just the fact that so many of the lines, apparently something like half the lines were ad-libbed, to the point where, like, there were so many, since a lot of these guys just knew each other, they just talked and stuff on set, and so they're like, this is a line's better than the one in the script, let's just do that. And so you can't really get that in a movie like the 2001 version, other than like the Malloy brothers, their little arguments. Apparently most of those were ad-libbed. Like, you can't really get that in that kind of movie, since so much of it is based on like deep precision and timing and everything, versus the original one is just kind of just this fun little time,
Yeah, that's true. Quick side note on that, Malloy brothers, probably my least favorite characters in the movie.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't enjoy them at all. I didn't particularly hate them. I kept forgetting that they existed, and when they showed up, they didn't really do anything to impress me.
Yeah, they're never really established as any, like, one particular, like, expertise. Like, they're just kind of, like, idiosyncratic and, like, just kind of good distractors and that sort of thing.
Well, one's good at building RC cars, and the other one's good at breaking them.
Yeah, like, they don't really go into it, like, their roles as a whole big thing. They really do just seem like they're there as, like, comedic relief characters, which is fine, but at the same time, it could have been done a bit better.
Yeah,
pretty much every other character, you can directly see what they bring to the table. Like, Danny and Rusty are big, like, planners. Ruben's a financier. Basher's the demolition guy. Yada yada.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of yeah. They definitely are kind of the weaker link of the whole team. I think. I'm trying to think. Who would you say in each movie was your favorite character of the crew? I know the original one's kind of hard to pick, but
Ooh. Of the crew, I think in the original one it would probably be, I don't know, it'd probably be Sammy Davis or Slim Pickens, whatever the hell his name was. He
Oh,
was interesting.
oh, Lewis Jackson. Well,
Yeah,
that's his character's name. I don't remember his actor's name, which I will
Clem,
look up. Clem Harvey.
Whatever. Yeah, either of them.
All right.
I was interested. I was more interested in what they were doing and what they had to say.
I weirdly liked Buddy Lester's character, even though he wasn't really that big a thing. He was just kind of the like quick to fight type, and I mostly like him because he's easily recognizable. Because it's like, oh, Scar guy, got it. And like it's probably between him and also Sammy Davis Jr. because Sammy Davis Jr. is just a delight.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Do you want to talk real quick about which one you prefer?
I mean, I think I'm definitely on a biased end here. I'm definitely going to say the 2001 version's my favorite because anytime this one definitely was hard for me though. This one was very difficult because it always comes down to quality of the film itself. Um, if if like for as enjoyable as the 1961 was, it just wasn't as well made of a film as the 2001 version. There's just so much skill on hand that I got to give it to that one.
Right. No, I agree with you. I know I've said this before. I don't think I've ever said this on the show, but sometimes when I take two movies, I can sort of separate what my favorite is from what I think is the better movie.
Right.
Um, like the one example I always use is for Disney. I think their best animated feature is Beauty and the Beast, but my favorite one is Alice in Wonderland.
Okay.
And that's sort of the same for here because I think the 2001 version is definitely a better movie, not just the fact that it's newer so it can have like better camera tricks or whatever. I think it's better done, it's better shot, it's better made. The acting is better in a lot of parts and so are the relationships, but I enjoyed myself a lot more while I was watching the 60s one, so I think that one is my favorite of the two.
All right. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I tend to enjoy it. Like I said, I'm biased. I love it just because of the 2001 one because I've had so much of a history with it, and so I enjoy myself so much just watching it over again. But it definitely was close for that very reason. I couldn't help but just enjoy my time with the 1961 just a little bit more, but I still had to give it to the 2001 one.
That's fair.
But yeah, a rare instance of us disagreeing on which one we prefer.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's
they're
interesting.
they're always welcomed though.
Hmm. And I guess I should
Okay.
say, I guess I should say briefly, as I'm continuing my effort to give movie recommendations as we go along. There's so many good heist movies that you could choose from, or just like even just like chaotic movies like this, like Escape from New York and that sort of thing. But for this one in particular, I honestly came up with The Italian Job because I think that one's kind of bashed on a lot. But I think it's a good mix of both, where it's kind of got the cool it's got the camera work and everything on display of the 2001 Oceans, but it's still campy and it's still fun. It's got a lot going on. It's kind of sort of low risk, but still kind of got some teeth to it, like the 1960s version. So I think it's a really good balance between the two, and I think it's honestly overlooked as a good film.
All right. Well, one question real quick.
Shoot.
Which Italian Job?
Uh,
The original or the remake?
there's an original.
Yes, there is.
Oh, crap. I have the egg on my face.
No, I there are a lot out there. I just so happen to know that one offhand because we own a copy of The Italian Job, and when I first watched it, I did research on it and found that out, and that was years ago.
Well,
So,
well
that's
then
something
I
we can
will.
do in the future.
I'll say I am referring to the more modern one. I'm assuming is the more modern one, the one that has Jason Statham in it, basically.
Yeah, that's the modern one.
Yeah. So that's the one I'm referring to. But hey, we got another potential one to work with.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll probably wait a little bit since it's a pretty similar tone, but still.
Oh, definitely. Get some other genres in there. But okay, so we're wrapping it up a bit. Where was I going with this? Oh yes. Go ahead and like it, favorite it, whatever it is, subscribe to it. You can find us on most major podcasting networks, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher. We're on Spotify, I believe, wherever you want to go. Our main hoster is anchor.fm, though. You primarily go to there. TheyRemade It.com, which just links to everywhere else, but I don't know if you want to look at it and say it looks pretty. Or send us something directly to our email.
Trust me, as always, we will accept any kind of comment, even if it's, just you telling us that we suck. That we take that as criticism.
Bash us as much as you want. If you are the first person to bash us, I will print it out and hang it somewhere.
It's like our first dollar.
Yeah, the first negative criticism.
Our first fag comment.
But that is at what's the email? TheyReMadeIt@gmail.com.
Yes, I'd hope you remember.
On Twitter at @ItRemade, which is basically just an account to follow that will tell you when new episodes are out.
Yeah, and it's something.
I don't know. I do a little thing the day before they're out, where I post like an obscure shot and say something about the new episode coming out. If you want, you can play a game and try to guess what it's going to be on, because we don't say it in the actual episode.
Right.
But I think that's actually about it.
Yeah, I think we've wrapped it up pretty well. I think this is definitely an enjoyable episode for me.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of fun watching these. I'm definitely looking forward to next week, which not the same genre, but very similar styles.
Oh yeah, we'll allow you guys to mull that one over.
Right. We'll definitely be getting to that one.
So yeah, I think we're just about done here.
Yep, we are. Want to take us out?
Sure. As always, I am your lovable host, Stuart.
And I'm the unlovable host, Jacob. Gotta counterbalance it somehow.
It's the good cop, bad cop of podcasts.
The yin and yang.
The peanut butter and jelly.
The Sonny and Cher.
the remake and the original.
That's a lot more clever than what I was gonna say. The Jake and the Fat Man. Okay.
Hey, you call me fat?
I actually didn't even think about that. I didn't even think about. Good night.
Good night.
Happy New Year, officer.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Say,
what's going on? What's all the excitement?
will you get this garbage truck on out of here?
Ooh, I'll be glad to do that then.